Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's morning is going well. Everybody is feeling well rested. We didn't party too hard in London yesterday. And if we did, we drank a lot of water and we've recovered. I guess I'll just get started. My name is Maria, and today we're going to be talking about Kubernetes troubleshooting. And we're going to be basing it in one of my favorite topics, reality television. So the title is Love is Blind, but your Kubernetes collaborative troubleshooting doesn't have to be. So just a little about me. I'm a developer advocate at Kubeshop, which hosts the Botkube project that I work on. My background is in industrial systems engineering, so a lot of the principles I'll be talking to you about is based in design systems design thinking. I also have a background in software engineering, and I've been in the developer relations space officially for 2 years, but since I've been teaching little kids how to code for the past, 5, I would like to consider myself pretty senior in that space. So if you've been here longer than 5 minutes, you know that the Kubernetes space is very complex. There's a steep learning curve. You have to learn everything from networking to the basics of deployment, and I feel like every month there's a new tool that is super important and that we have to know about. So for the average engineering team, it can be pretty intimidating. On top of that, troubleshooting is very challenging. And now in this hybrid space that we live in, when you have teams that are in different time zones, they have different levels of skill and expertise, it can be very difficult to solve problems quickly. So what is Kubernetes troubleshooting? So at its core, it's basically just identifying and solving Kubernetes issues. So common ones have to do with memory, resource allocation, and networking problems. So, the center of this talk, Netflix's Love is Blind. So, for some context, it was a popular reality TV show that came out during the pandemic. I watched a little too much of it instead of studying. And that's honestly worked out because I can talk about it for my job now. And it's a very popular TV show. So, since season 4, it has brought in over 40 million hours of streaming time, which means a lot of money for Netflix. So, the basis for this story. So, back in April, millions of people, me included, were waiting to hear about the Love is Blind season 4 reunion. So, it was a pretty tumultuous season because everybody hated that guy and they wanted to see where he ended up. But instead of finding out what happened with his love life, they got this instead. And frankly, they were not happy about it. Here are some of my favorite tweets from Arizona Iced Tea. I skipped my son's baptism for this. My favorite meme of Matthew McConaughey talking to Netflix live support. Even AOC tuning in and chiming in about how somebody needs to fix this. Karamo saying that, it's a disappointment. We were rooting for you. We were all rooting for you. And if anybody knows where that's from, it's from Tyra Banks' America's Next Top Model. So after 90 minutes, Netflix came out and apologized and said, we're not able to do this, and they'll film it, and it'll come out later. So it ended up coming out 19 hours later. And this wasn't their first live streaming event. So previously, they had a successful live stream with Chris Rock's special, but they weren't not prepared for the influx of people like me, senators, very important people who were tuning in for this live stream. And it's bad when the CEO had to write a statement. So that means they lost a lot of money in this debacle for him to write all of that and talk about this incident in their quarterly earnings report. So very, very serious issue. So how does this relate to Kubernetes troubleshooting? So I do not have their postmortem, but I can make an educated guess that one of the errors that occurred was probably a own killed error, which is one of the most common Kubernetes troubleshooting errors. And here's just the typical way of going through this process. So 5 basic steps. First, you identify the container or pod that was terminated. You check the memory usage of the container or pod. Then you look for any errors. You update the container and increase memory limit. That sounds really easy. 5 steps, you're done. But this happens overnight. And so, for example, a lot of times the Netflix engineering teams are not all talking to each other. Maybe one person's on call. Maybe a couple of people are on call for this. And this 5-step process can go from a few minutes to a few hours. And that's at the scale of Netflix. So if they were not able to handle it, imagine what your team would experience. And once we add in multiple clusters, it gets even more crazy, because it's harder to identify the root cause. Visibility decreases, complexity increases, and the responsibility allocation becomes more difficult. And Netflix isn't just running Kubernetes bare metal. When you have multiple tools going on, it can be very difficult to sort of get rid of all the noise and figure out where the root cause of the problem is. So some lessons to be learned. So Netflix engineering is probably one of the most prominent companies in this space. So if they are having trouble with maintaining large volumes for live streaming, imagine what your company has issues with. And if it can happen to them, it can happen to you. And this problem will only continue to grow as more people go online, as we go through our digital transformation. I mean, if you've looked at things like Ticketmaster sales, every year they're breaking records for the amount of people that are in the queue. So these problems are only going to get worse and get more complex as our society changes. So we need to have a strategic approach to troubleshooting. So here are my 5 Kubernetes troubleshooting best practices. Number 1, you want to centralize your monitoring and observability. And this means you want to put all of your information into one place. Because when you are dealing with communication, it's important to make sure that everybody has the same amount of context. That rule applies for any field in any place. Like doctors in medicine, everybody has to know what's going on in a patient's chart. Everybody has access to a patient's chart. And that same logic applies to the Kubernetes space. Incident response and collaboration. So we need to have a system in place and a protocol in place for responding to particular incidents, because we notice that patterns occur with problems, so we have to have a systematic approach to problem solving. Number 3, establish a feedback loop. How do we allocate responsibility? How do we keep track of what's going on? How do we make sure there's a clear line of communication and a clear chain of command when approaching problem solving? And 4th, streamlining command execution. So as we scale, it's important to eliminate redundancies and inefficiencies in our system. So where are places that we can automate? Where are places that we can easily scale our protocols? And finally, we need to automate observability and delivery processes. Because we now have these large swaths of data and these large histories, like postmortems are very important. We need to actually do things with them. So we need to take those insights that we learned and apply them to automation. So now we're in this, I know it's a buzzword, but this machine learning era. So how do we use that to our advantage? So I'm going to be talking a little bit about Botkube, why I'm here today. And so what is Botkube, and how does it help teams follow troubleshooting best practices? So at its core, Botkube is a collaborative Kubernetes troubleshooting tool. It allows you to not only monitor your events, but also act on your events in the same platform. You can collaborate with your team with all of the standard collaboration tools like Slack, Discord, Teams, and Mattermost. And it's designed to help improve developer experience, so not every single developer should have to be a Kubernetes expert to make sure that their apps are deployed safely. So how do we give them enough access to get their work done without forcing them to become experts? And finally, because it's connected to your communication platform tool, you're able to respond to alerts and access your cluster from anywhere. So you can imagine having the power to react to an incident on call from your phone, from your couch, in your bed. Imagine all that power. So just a quick overview, I mentioned the platforms that it works with. Currently, it works with Kubernetes Source, Prometheus, and Kept-In, and then the Executor plugins work with kubectl and Helm. And you're also able to automate event responses. We have a plugin system that works with a lot of the cloud-native tools. So like I said before, most companies are not just using Kubernetes bare metal, so we want to apply those same automation principles to the other tools in the ecosystem. And then with the audit logs, you're able to get that history and be able to make performance insights. And then finally, it's easier to configure with the web-hosted app. So how does Botkube help you empower your observability? So you're able to receive real-time updates on your environment right in Slack or whatever tool. I'm going to be using Slack for this presentation. And you're able to be informed about changes. So instead of like looking and hunting for errors, the errors come right to you in real time. So it really speeds up that process. And you're able to separate channels based on different tags or different teams and what they are looking for. So incident response and collaboration. In this GIF, you see an error occur, and you see the team acting on it in one place. So you're able to have your easy chain of command, and people see exactly what you're doing live. So there's not this sort of black box effect of seeing who did what to the cluster. You get all of that information in one visible place. So the feedback loop comes in when you have the audit logs. You're able to have a history and have insights about performance. So if you have a team and you notice, your intern making the same errors and the pods go down whenever they're on staff, you get data that shows you some performance. And I'm all about continuous improvement coming from my industrial system background, and having the history to work with and having that data to work with will enable you to make smarter decisions in the future. So streamlining command executions, you're able to leverage Botkube to make commands for multiple clusters. So you can run one command for multiple clusters. With the Slack interactivity, you're able to give non-experts more accessibility to Kubernetes, basically. So if you didn't have the pressure of memorizing all the syntax for all the commands you need to run, you can just build it yourself, which I think is really useful because there's so many things that we need to remember and understand, and it really lowers the barrier to entry when it comes to that process, so you're not dependent on experts to get the job done. So here's an example of an automation. For some reason, my GIF did not work, but this is an automation that shows the logs automatically on error. So instead of repeating the redundant step of doing a kubectl get logs, Botkube will do it automatically, and it'll already be integrated into your process. So you can remove 1 to 2 steps from your troubleshooting process without even doing anything, which I think is great for reducing time and eliminating some human error that occurs. So we saw this picture before, and here is the improved workflow. So we took a 5-step process and turned it into a 2-step process. And all of these, the first 3 steps that just happened instantaneously. So imagine having your troubleshooting scenario basically cut in half just with automation. And then imagine what that looks like in terms of scale. Imagine what these numbers look like. I know the law of numbers is very powerful, so as you scale up, eliminating 3 steps can make a big difference. So, in conclusion, I think a strategic approach to Kubernetes troubleshooting is very, very important for multi-cluster environments. As we enter this wild, wild west of huge, huge environments, it's very important to have a calculated and strategic approach to troubleshooting. You shouldn't have to go into it blindly. And by following those 5 steps, centralizing your monitoring and observability, by having a feedback loop, streamline execution out on automation, those will be key to having that strategic approach. And integrating solutions like Botkube will enhance efficiency and reliability across all Kubernetes clusters. So I'm going to give you a quick demo, and here's just how to get started with Botkube. You can either do it through the web-hosted app, or you can do it through a Helm chart, pretty easy. And here is my demo. I pre-recorded because I do not trust the demo gods to be nice to me today. Okay. I'll just double it. And please forgive me, I am not going to win any filmography awards today. In the middle, it will get a little blurry, and I'm sorry for that. So as you can see, you can start with Botkube, and this is the Slack example. You can just do a ping, Botkube will say pong, you can ask for help, you can get some ideas of some of the help commands that we have. First, I like to see what executives we're using. So in this demo, we're going to use the ChatGPT plugin, Helm, and kubectl. So there are aliases as well to shorten out that time. And here's an example of building out a get pods command. If you've been following any webinar that I do that because I can spell pods without any issues. And you can see it run the command. I bet slowly, because my internet. And you can see all of the commands that you have access to. And then here is an example of an error that pops in. Here's me manually doing the describe function. And you can see you get a full log of what's going on. You can filter based on your output. So lots of time these logs can be hundreds of lines long, and it's nice to be able to filter what you see. And here's an automation of me doing that same command when I got an ingress error. So then here's me using the Helm function, Helm list, because that's all I could remember to do at 7 o'clock in the morning. And you get the latest version. Here is the Botkube ChatGPT plugin I'm using. So I'm asking Botkube, what's a Kubernetes ingress? Because I put in an ingress error. And it serves as being able to have docs in one place. This is where it gets kind of wonky, I'm so sorry. So this is me using the Flux command, the Flux plugin. I don't mean to have audio, so let me take that out. So here I'm able to create the Flux source all right from my Slack channel, which is great for my GitOps users. I really am allergic to VS Code, so the less I have to use it, the better I feel. And being able to have that log, that history in your Slack channel, I think is super powerful. And it's secure, and it's the Kubernetes RBAC is tied per channel, so not everybody and their grandma gets this information, which I think is also helpful. And I think it's just really useful for, I guess, more novice people who are trying to get started. I think a lot of times when we think about open source, we kind of like throw people into the gauntlet and say, oh, it's free, try it out. And here is an example of doing the diff, flux diff. You get GitHub source. You can see me seeing the difference between the PR my colleague made. He changed the seconds for the deployment. And then that's a reference to the PR number. And you can see all the changes in Botkube. So here's just an example, and we're still expanding what our plugin system looks like. So as we hear feedback and see what kind of workflows people are using, we really just want to find ways to streamline and automate those processes. Yeah, I'm so sorry for the quality. Don't know what happened there. And you can easily approve a pull request, and we're trying to expand that. So right now we're working with Flux. We have plans in the roadmap to start doing this with Argo. So imagine being able to do this process and be able to approve or deny rollbacks from Slack. So I think that also gives you a lot of power from the DevOps engineer perspective. And then I did a Flux install backwards for some reason. So yeah, you have a lot of power here. I know probably in your head you're like, permissions. You can change the types of permissions that you use. So you can make it read-only for everybody else and just do a separate channel. But here's my little demo. Oopsie. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. But thank you so much for joining me and giving me the opportunity to talk about reality TV. All right, yes?
Yeah, so you mentioned permissions.
Yes.
And whether or not you can execute actions. What we see at our customers is often a team owns a namespace, and the team has a Slack channel. So is there also a way to segregate the data to say, hey, these people, and then it's somewhere stored in GitLab or AD or whatever?
Yes, you can definitely like separate it by namespace as well, and limit the amount of data that people receive. So it's not just like open plain for everybody. You can pretty much limit it. You can pretty much give people as much or as little access as you want.
And do you fetch that information from external systems like Active Directory or GitLab or whatever?
Yes. Yes. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Integration with PagerDuty or something like that?
I thought about this. It's on the roadmap, but now that you said it out loud, I hope one of my devs are listening, and we'll get it done.
Sorry, what was that question?
He said integration with PagerDuty.
Oh.
Yeah, I've heard PagerDuty, integrations with Fire Hydrant, and ServiceNow as well. So if there's interest, you know, make a GitHub issue, maybe, and we'll get it done. Oh yeah, so here are the links. You can see, you can go ahead and install Botkube, either going to the website or going to the GitHub repo and just doing a quick Helm chart, or you know, join me in Slack. You can give me all of your suggestions, comments, concerns there. Any more RBAC questions you have, you can tell it to me in Slack. But thank you so much for joining me.